The diner was half asleep. Boons, a narrow slice of chrome and faded neon, sat sandwiched between a coin laundromat and a shuttered pawn shop on the wrong end of Brooklyn. Its cracked vinyl booths whispered of decades gone. A jukebox in the corner held its breath, quiet since the 90s. The scent of burnt coffee lingered like a ghost. Outside, the rain fell in sheets, washing the streets with silver streaks and exhaustion. Lena Carter, 28, leaned against the counter arms, crossed over her grease-stained apron. Her dark hair was knotted in a lazy bun, a pencil tucked behind one ear. The kind of tired on her face wasn't about lack of sleep, was the tired that came from carrying memories you never wanted and dreams you were too scared to say out loud. She watched the empty street through the fogged window. A part of her still expected someone to walk through that door with a story worth hearing. Most nights, it was regulars, old truckers, construction guys, the lonely and the overlooked. People who didn't need menus because Lena already knew what they craved. She made it her job to know. But tonight, there was no one, only the sound of rain and the hum of the fridge behind her. And then, the bell above the door rang. Lena turned. What stepped inside looked like it didn't belong anywhere. The girl, maybe 20, maybe younger, was soaked through. Her designer coat hung off her bony frame like it belonged to someone else. Hair matted to her skull, blonde and stringy, her skin pale enough to blend with the fluorescent light. Her cheekbones jutted sharply, too sharply, like glass could break against them, and her eyes wide blue, frantic, searched the room like she'd stumbled into another planet. She moved to the counter without a word, sitting on the stool nearest the corner. Her hands trembled as she pulled the coat tighter. She didn't meet Lena's gaze. Lena's chest tightened. This wasn't new. She'd seen fragility before: runaways, addicts, girls with nowhere else to go. But this was a different kind of broken. This girl looked like she had no idea how to take up space anymore. Like every breath was a battle she wasn't sure was worth fighting. "Hey, hun," Lena said softly. Her voice was warm, a gentle anchor in the stillness. "Hell of a storm out there." The girl didn't answer. She blinked slowly. "You want something warm? Coffee?" A slight shake of the head. Her voice, when it came, was a thread. "Just water, please." Lena nodded, grabbed a glass, and filled it from behind the counter. She placed it in front of the girl, who took it with both hands as if it might slip through her fingers. "What's your name?" Lena asked. There was a pause. "Isabel." The name sounded like it belonged in a mansion, not in Boone's. At midnight, Lena pulled a laminated menu from the holder and slid it across. "Kitchen's still open. You don't have to eat, but sometimes just looking helps." Isabel didn't open it. Her fingers traced the edges absently, like it was a map she'd forgotten how to read. "I'm not hungry," she whispered. Lena saw it then, the flicker in her eyes. Shame, fear, a secret trying hard not to fall apart in public. She didn't push. Instead, she turned toward the stovetop. A pot of tomato soup simmered low. Her own recipe. She'd written it in her journal during one of the many nights in foster care where a hot meal was a luxury. Without a word, she ladled a bowl and slid it across the counter. Steam rose in soft tendrils. "This one's on the house," she said. "Just something warm." Isabel stared at the bowl. Lena didn't say anything else. She returned to wiping the already clean counter, pretending not to watch. But from the corner of her eye, she saw the hesitation. Isabel's hand hovered over the spoon, shaking slightly. She picked it up. The first sip was barely more than a taste. Then another, and another dot. And then the tears came, silently, at first, just a glisten in her eyes that broke and slid down her cheeks. She didn't sob, didn't sniffle, just kept eating, slow and steady, as if the soup might disappear if she stopped. Lena said nothing. Let her cry. It wasn't just soup. It was a memory, a comfort, a surrender. When Isabel finally set the spoon down, only half the bowl was gone, but it felt like a miracle. She wiped her face quickly, ashamed of her tears. Thank you, she said, almost inaudibly. Then she stood, pulled her coat tighter, and slipped out the door without another word. Lena watched her go, heart heavy. She didn't know Isabel's story, not yet. But something told her that this wasn't the last time she'd see her. Later that night, when the diner was quiet again, Lena opened the battered journal she kept under the register. She flipped past pages of recipes and scribbled quotes. On a clean page, she wrote, "Girl in the rain, soup, something different about her." It was a habit she'd never let go, of writing down moments that felt like they mattered, even if she didn't yet understand why. As she closed the journal, the wind howled outside and thunder cracked above the skyline. But inside there was only silence and the lingering scent of tomato soup. The morning after the rain was quiet, but Lena didn't feel calm. She was in the back of the diner, hands submerged in warm dishwater, scrubbing at a plate that didn't need more scrubbing. Her mind kept drifting to the girl Isabel, the way her fingers shook, the way the soup seemed to reach places no one else had. Lena didn't know what it meant, but it felt ... unfinished. The bell over the door rang again. Her heart jumped, irrationally hoping it was Isabel returning. It wasn't. It was Maria, the line cook, already grumbling about the fridge compressor and the city. Trash pickup, normalcy, routine, comfort in its own way. Then Lena's phone buzzed on the counter. Unknown number. She dried her hands on her apron and hesitated for a second before answering. Hello, a voice sharp male, composed. Is this Lena Carter? Yes, this is James Morgan. I believe you met my daughter last night. The name hit harder than it should have. Morgan, of Morgan Capital. Real estate, tech, media. The name was synonymous with Manhattan skyscrapers and boardroom headlines. Lena's brows furrowed. You, Savell. She told me about you. About the soup, the diner. Lena glanced at the pot from last night, still cooling beside the stove. I'd like to meet, in person, he said. Today, 2 p.m., 475 Lexington, top floor. There was no please, just expectation. The line went dead. Lena stared at the phone. She had no idea what just happened, but she knew one thing. Rich men didn't call diner waitresses unless something very strange was going on. By 1:30 p.m., Lena stood at the foot of a skyscraper that looked like it had been carved from ice and ambition. Her second-hand jacket clung to her shoulders, her boots scuffed. Inside, everything gleamed polished marble, metal, glass. People moving fast and quiet like they were paid by the second. She felt like a smudge on the surface of perfection. The receptionist didn't blink when Lena gave her name, just nodded, and directed her to the express elevator. The ride up was silent. When the doors opened, the top floor looked like a modern cathedral, a sea of glass walls, curated art, and too much empty space. James Morgan stood at the far end, behind a desk. That could have been a sculpture. He was tall, sharply dressed, silver-haired and tense. His presence filled the room like gravity. Double quotes, Miss Carter, he said. Thank you for coming. Lena approached cautiously. Is Isabel okay? He paused. She's single quotes, us, ... stable. For now. There was something brittle under his surface. A hairline fracture in the calm exterior. She hasn't eaten like that in months, he continued. She said you didn't pressure her, just gave her soup, and she ate. Lena nodded slowly, still not sure where this was going. James walked to the floor-to-ceiling window, looking out at the city like he owned every block of it. Maybe he did. She's been battling anorexia for 3 years. We've tried everything. Clinics, specialists, nutritionists, some of the best in the country. Nothing sticks. I'm not a doctor, Lena said, instantly on guard. No, James replied, turning to her. But she responded to you. That's rare. There was something. Pleading in his eyes now, buried beneath all that authority. I want to hire you, he said. To be her recovery coach. Full-time, Lena blinked. What, live in? You'd stay with her, cook with her, talk, build trust. You already started something. I want you to keep going. I run a diner, she said. I'm barely holding it together myself. I don't have credentials. I'm not asking for credentials. I'm asking for results. His voice was firm again, but not unkind. Just ... desperate. I'm prepared to compensate you generously, he added. Name your price. Lena didn't answer right away. She remembered Isabel's eyes. The way she'd held the spoon like it was something forbidden. How she'd eaten slowly, like tasting safety for the first time. And she remembered something else. How she had eaten alone for years. How no one had offered her a bowl of anything that came with kindness. This isn't about the money, she said. I know, James replied. Lena looked down at her calloused hands. I'm not sure I'm what she needs. She trusts you, he said. That's more than I've managed in a very long time. The silence stretched in Lena's mind. She saw her younger self, years old, hiding under a thin blanket in a stranger's house, stomach empty, heart hollower still. She'd needed someone like this, someone who saw her. Maybe that's what Isabel needed. Lena took a slow breath. All right, I'll try. James didn't smile, but his shoulders lowered a fraction, as if the air finally reached his lungs. You start tomorrow, he said. My driver will pick you up at 9. She left the tower in a daze, back onto the streets where people moved at a different speed. Her feet hit the pavement, but her mind hadn't landed yet. What had she just agreed to that night back in the empty diner? She opened her journal again. She didn't write much, just, she's not the only one who's starving. She closed the book and stared at the soup pot again, the same one she'd ladled from the night before. Tomorrow, she'd step into a world she didn't belong to, but maybe, just maybe, she belonged to Isabel, not as a coach, not as a caretaker, as someone who knew what it meant to be hungry. The next morning, the city moved like clockwork outside Lena's window. But inside the black car that pulled up to Boone's at 8:59 sharp, everything was still. Lena slid into the back seat, gripping the strap of her worn canvas bag. The driver, polite but silent, didn't ask questions. The car smelled like leather and order, everything precise, everything intentional. They drove uptown, past places Lena rarely visited, past men in suits checking their watches, past glass-front boutiques and doormen in uniforms, past anything that looked like her. When they reached the building, it didn't feel like a home. It felt like a vault. The doorman addressed her by name clearly, briefed The elevator opened directly into the penthouse, and as the doors slid open with a soft hiss, Lena stepped into the airless quiet of the Morgan residence. Marble floors stretched out like a museum. A chandelier glittered above a modern staircase. On the far side of the room, the kitchen gleamed into sterile, expensive. Isabel stood there, barefoot on the cold tiles, wrapped in an oversized grey sweater that swallowed her frame. She was holding a mug with both hands, as if it anchored her. "You didn't have to come," Isabel said quietly, her voice almost disappearing into the marble. "I wanted to," Lena replied, placing her bag down on the kitchen island with a soft thud. She offered a tentative smile. "You ready to make something with me?" Isabel looked at her for a moment. Something flickered behind those guarded eyes. She didn't smile, but she didn't retreat either. It was a beginning. They started with soup, tomato, again. Familiar, simple. No sharp textures, no pressure. Lena guided without commanding. "We'll start with garlic. You can peel while I chop." "The onions." Isabel nodded and reached for the garlic, her fingers tentative, slow. The kitchen was quiet, but not uncomfortable. It was a silence full of things neither of them knew how to say yet. A silence that made room. They didn't talk. Much, not at first. Just the sounds of chopping, simmering, and the low bubbling of the pot. The scent filled the space warm, familiar, human dot as Lena stirred. She glanced sideways. Isabel's hands were still trembling, but she was trying, focused, present. It mattered later. They sat across from each other at the long marble table that felt too large for just two people. Isabel stared at the soup. Her spoon hovered. "No pressure," Lena said softly. "Take your time." Isabel took one small sip, then another. Her shoulders relaxed by a fraction. Halfway through the bowl, she spoke again, her voice barely audible. "I haven't cooked since I was a kid." Lena looked up from her own bowl, nodding gently. "Yeah. My mom used to let me help in the kitchen," Isabel continued, her spoon still in her hand. Before she left, there was no bitterness in her tone, just distance. Like the memory lived in a house far away. Lena paused her eating, setting her spoon down. "Mine wasn't around either. I was in foster care, bounced between homes. But there was this one woman, ... She smiled at the thought. She didn't stay long, but she taught me how to cook eggs without burning the pan. She said, if nothing else, make something warm. It tricks the heart into thinking it's safe." Isabel looked at her, something softening in her expression. Not quite trust, but something close. The next day, they made pancakes, burnt the first batch, laughed about it. A small, nervous kind of laugh, like stretching a muscle that hadn't been used in years. On Thursday, they tried vegetable stew. Isabel peeled potatoes. Lena told her stories about Boonzabout, Maria singing off-key while flipping burgers, about a trucker named Denny who left haikus on napkins instead of tips. "That doesn't sound real," Isabel said, raising an eyebrow as she stirred. "I swear," Lena grinned. "He once wrote, egg yolk like sunrise, coffee tastes like New Jersey. I weep in silence." Isabel actually laughed. It was short, but it was real. As days passed, food became their shared language. No lectures, no calorie counts. Just making, tasting, adjusting. Some days Isabel ate more, some days less, but she always sat down, always tried. One afternoon, while slicing carrots, Isabel asked, "Do you ever feel like your body doesn't belong to you?" Lena didn't answer right away. The question lingered in the air, raw and echoing. "Yeah," Lena said finally, keeping her eyes on the cutting board. "A lot." Isabel nodded, as if hearing it from someone else made the thought easier to carry. That night, they sat in the living room with steaming mugs of herbal tea. The TV was off. The penthouse was quiet, but no longer cold. Isabel looked down into her cup, then up at Lena. "You know, I used to be everywhere. Photo shoots, galas, red carpets, people always touching my hair, fixing my dress, adjusting my smile." She took a breath, but not once did anyone ask if I was hungry. Lena looked at her, her throat tightened. "Were you?" Isabel nodded slowly. "Yes, but not for food." Lena set her mug down and leaned forward, her voice quiet. "You're allowed to eat. You're allowed to be full. You're allowed to be seen." Tears welled in Isabel's eyes. She blinked them back. Then, softly, she whispered, "Thank you." The words landed between them with a weight that felt like truth. That night, after Isabel had gone to bed, Lena stayed in the kitchen. She opened her journal again, wrote only a sentence. "She's letting herself be seen. I don't think she's ever done that before." She closed the book, but the moment stayed, and so did the silence. But now it was the good kind. The next morning, Lena woke before the sun. She lay in the guest room of the penthouse, the ceiling high above her, painted in soft grey. No cracks, no stains, no dripping pipes or distant shouting like in the places she used to sleep. It was quiet, too quiet. She reached for her journal, always within arm's reach, opened it without turning on the light. Her fingers brushed the corner of a page she hadn't touched in years. One labeled only Urgi Deserces. A folded letter was tucked inside. The paper, yellowed and thin, unfolded with a soft whisper. The handwriting was messy but determined. Asterisk, asterisk, dear me, you are not a burden. You are not invisible. You matter, even when they don't see you. Asterisk, asterisk. She stopped reading. Something sharp twisted in her chest. Lena pressed the letter shut and closed her eyes. The kitchen felt warmer that morning. Or maybe it was just her. She found Isabel already at the counter, measuring oats with exaggerated care. "You're early," Lena said. Tying her apron, Isabel gave a small shrug. "Didn't sleep much?" Lena nodded, recognizing the look. Restless thoughts? A mind that replayed old memories with cruel precision, as they stirred oatmeal together. Isabel asked without looking up, "Do you ever have dreams that don't make sense?" "All the time," Lena replied, cracking a walnut into the bowl. "Last week I dreamt my old social worker was trying to sell me a toaster. Said it would fix everything." Isabel smiled faintly. "Mine's usually ... running, like I'm chasing something I forgot." Lena's smile faded. She knew that feeling. The ache of reaching for something someone you never had. Later that day, during a lull, Lena stepped out for a walk. Not far, just around the block. The doorman nodded as she left, like she belonged. She didn't, not really. She wandered into a small bookstore a few streets down, bought nothing, just ran her fingers along the spines. Then she saw it, a cookbook from her childhood, Meals for One. The same one her first foster home kept on a shelf no one touched. She opened it. Inside, the pages were smudged and annotated. Someone had written, "Add garlic if you're sad." Another note said, "Skip the parsley, life's too short." A lump formed in her throat. She bought the book, back in the penthouse. Isabel was curled up on the couch, blanket round her knees, TV playing low with no sound. You okay? Lena asked. Isabel nodded, then hesitated. Actually, no. Lena sat beside her, waited. I looked at myself in the mirror today, Isabel began, her voice soft and tight. And I thought, if I disappeared, would anyone notice? Words cut through the air like broken glass. Lena swallowed. I've thought that too, a lot. She paused, then added, there were nights in foster homes where I didn't speak a word. No one asked why. No one even noticed. Isabel looked. At her, really looked. When was that? All of it. Lena exhaled slowly. From 5 until 17. Some houses were okay. Most were just ... quiet. Cold. You learn to be small. To survive without making ripples. Isabel bit her lip. That's how I feel around my father. Lena wasn't surprised. You ever tell him that? Isabel laughed. A bitter sound. He thinks emotions are for ... weaker people. And I'm supposed to be the image. Perfect, controlled, smiling. She looked away. I stopped eating because it was the only thing I could control. The silence that followed wasn't hollow. It was full of truth. After a while, Lena stood. Come on, we're making cookies. Isabel blinked. Now. They stood side by side at the counter. Lena handed her the cookbook, the one from the store. This, Lena said, was the first book I ever stole. Isabel's eyes widened. I was 10, hungry, tired. They kept telling me I should just be grateful. So one night, I slipped this into my backpack. She chuckled softly. I returned it the next day, but not before I memorized half the recipes. They laughed, really laughed. They mixed flour and sugar, vanilla and salt. Isabel cracked the eggs. Lena guided her hands as they kneaded the dough. Isabel asked, do you ever wish you'd had a different life? Lena's hands stilled for a moment. Yes, she admitted. But then I remember, wouldn't be me if I hadn't lived this one. They shaped the dough into imperfect circles. Nothing precise. Nothing curated. Just real, the cookies baked. Slowly, the scent of butter and chocolate filled the sterile space, softening the corners. When they pulled the tray from the oven, Isabel picked one up, still warm. Wait, Lena said, grinning. You'll burn your tongue. I don't care. She bit into it anyway. Closed her eyes. God, that's good. It's not perfect, Lena warned. That's why it's good, Isabel replied, crumbs on her sweater. Later, they sat. On the couch again, cookies between them. You're helping me, Isabel said. Lena met her gaze. But I want to help you too. Lena didn't respond right away. She thought of the letter in her journal. The dream she never spoke aloud. The weight she carried, even here, in this glittering cage of a home. You are, Lena whispered, and she meant it. That night, in her guest room, she lit a candle and opened her journal. She wrote 2 words, not invisible, and for the first time in a long time, she believed it. The following afternoon, Lena found herself in the penthouse kitchen, wiping down the already spotless counter. The scent of cinnamon and butter still lingered from the cookies they had made the night before. Isabel had retreated to her room hours ago after eating 3 cookies without counting the calories. A quiet victory, a bigger one than anyone else might have noticed. Lena poured herself a glass of water, feeling the ache behind her eyes. Not from exhaustion, exactly, from something deeper. A pressure building. She wasn't sure what had changed, but something in the air felt heavier today. She didn't have to wait long to find out why. The door to the elevator opened with a soft chime. James Morgan stepped into the apartment, removing his coat with mechanical precision. His suit was dark, pristine, his expression unreadable. Lena straightened instinctively. He nodded at her. "She's in her room." "She is," Lena replied. James walked toward the kitchen, loosening his tie just slightly. "How's her progress?" "She's eating," Lena said, "every day, bit by bit. She talks more, laughs sometimes." James didn't smile. "Good. She has an event next month. I'd like her strong enough to attend." Lena stared at him. "An event?" she asked. He nodded. "Charity, gala, cameras, press. Nothing overwhelming, but it would help show she's recovering." "She's not ready for that," Lena said, her voice sharp before she could stop it. James's gaze turned on her. "She's improving, isn't she? If she can eat 3 cookies, she can manage one." Evening in public. Lena set the cloth down. Her hands were trembling. "She's improving because no one here is asking her to be anything but herself," she said. "Because no one is demanding a smile, or a perfect dress, or a body that fits a photo." James narrowed his eyes. "You're overstepping." Lena stepped forward, her voice calm but steely. "Maybe, but someone has to." There was a long silence. Finally, James exhaled, barely more than a breath. "You don't understand the pressure. The world watches us. Our name is everything. She's the face of the Morgan legacy." "She's your daughter," Lena said, her voice firm. "Not a brand, not an accessory to your empire." James's jaw clenched. "She thinks she has to earn your love," Lena continued. "By being thin, by being quiet, by disappearing." His posture tightened, his body still as marble. "She is killing herself trying to be what you want," Lena said, her voice now lower, quieter, but with razor precision. "Is that worth your legacy?" He turned away, walked to the massive window overlooking the city. His reflection stared back at him in the glass, all control and distance. "She was always fragile," he said after a long pause. "Even as a child, and her mother leaving didn't help." "So you doubled the pressure," Lena said, "to make her stronger." James didn't answer. Lena took a breath. "Look, I get it. You built all this with blood and time and sacrifice. But she's not your monument. She's a person, and she's drowning under the weight of your expectations." James finally turned back to her. His eyes, usually cold and calculating, held. Something else now. Regret. Maybe even shame. "I didn't know what else to do," he admitted. Lena let the silence settle. "She doesn't need a coach," she said. "She needs a father." That night, Lena didn't write in her journal. She sat by the window instead, curled in the chair with a blanket draped over her legs, staring out into the city. The lights shimmered in the distance, but none of them reached her. She thought about what she had said, about what it meant to speak that boldly to someone like James Morgan. But more than that, she thought about Isabel, and what it meant to finally be seen and believed. The next day, something had changed. James arrived at the penthouse in the afternoon. No suit, no briefcase, just him in a sweater and slacks, holding something in his hands. A photo album. Isabel froze when she saw him. He didn't move closer, just placed the album on the table and sat down. "I found this in storage," he said, eyes not quite meeting. Hers. "You were 5. We were at the lake house. You made a mud pie and demanded I eat it. I pretended it was delicious." Isabel stared at the album, not touching it. I thought maybe, James added, we could look through it, together. She said nothing for a long time. Then slowly, she sat across from him. They opened the album in silence, page by page, image by image. The distance between them thinned. There were photos of a girl smiling, free of expectations. Hair wild, knees scraped, face full of joy. It didn't fix everything, but it cracked something open after he left. Isabel lingered in the kitchen. Lena was prepping vegetables for dinner, quietly letting her process. He listened, Isabel said finally. I didn't think he could. Maybe he didn't. No how, Lena replied. They stood there, side by side again, the silence between them not empty, but full. Isabel touched the edge of the counter. I used to think being perfect would keep him close. And now, Lena asked. I don't want to be perfect, she said. Then softly, almost shyly, she added, I just want to be ... me. Lena nodded. That's more than enough. As the stew simmered and the night drew in, Lena felt something new settle inside her. Not relief, not victory, just ... possibility. And for the first time, that felt like everything. The next morning, Lena arrived in the kitchen earlier than usual. She didn't know why. Maybe because the apartment finally felt like it had a pulse. Maybe because she'd started to believe something real was growing between them, something not tied to recovery plans or contracts, but to care she had just tied on her apron when Isabel entered, barefoot, holding a small notepad. I thought we could try something different today, Isabel said, eyes still cautious, but carrying a flicker of certainty. Lena raised an eyebrow, surprised. You got something in mind? Isabel handed over the notepad. On it, a scribbled recipe, roasted vegetables with couscous, lemon, and mint. I saw it online, she said, figured I could do the chopping. Lena smiled. Deal, I'll supervise. They moved around the kitchen more fluidly now, too. Bodies in rhythm. Isabel washed carrots, celery, and eggplant, while Lena heated the oven. The scent of olive oil and rosemary began to fill the room. You ever think of opening your own place? Isabel asked suddenly, slicing a red pepper with deliberate focus. Lena looked up from the couscous she was fluffing all the time. She leaned back against the counter. Ever since I was a kid, really, not a big place. Something small, warm, a diner where no one's invisible. You have the journal, Isabel said, with all the recipes. Lena nodded, her voice soft. I used to write them like spells. Thought maybe one day I'd cook my way out of whatever place I was stuck in. There was silence for a moment, except for the chopping. I think you could do it, Isabel said finally. Lena didn't answer right away, because for the first time, she believed it too. Later that day, Lena sat alone in her room, the journal open on her lap. She flipped past the recipes, the stories, the drawings of imagined tabletops and open kitchens. At the very back, folded flat, was a page she hadn't dared read in years. It wasn't a recipe, it was a promise. One day, this won't be a dream. It'll be mine. She exhaled sharply. That night, as the city lights blinked outside the window, Lena reached for her phone. She dialed a number she hadn't called in years. Voicemail, double quotes, Hey, it's Lena. You probably don't even remember me. I was the one who always asked for kitchen duty at the Macon house. I still remember your lentil stew. Anyway, I just wanted to say thanks. You showed me food could be more than survival, that it could be love. She hung up without leaving. her name, but that was okay. The next few days were filled with quiet transformation. Isabel started posting on social media, again not curated shots of gowns or stylists, but simple videos. Her cooking with Lena, cracking jokes over dough, sitting cross-legged eating a bowl of pasta with a dog-eared book beside her. In one post, she spoke directly to the camera. "My name's Isabel Morgan. I've spent 3 years fighting an eating disorder, and for most of that time, I thought my body was the enemy. But lately, I'm learning that food isn't shame, it's connection. And maybe, just maybe, I don't have to disappear to feel worthy." The video went viral. Messages poured in, some supportive, some cruel. Lena watched her navigate it all with surprising strength. "You okay with all this attention?" Lena asked one afternoon as they kneaded dough for bread. Isabel nodded slowly. "It's weird, but it's real, and that feels better than fake silence." Lena smiled. "Welcome to the messy part." One evening, after a quiet dinner, Isabel sat on the couch, flipping through Lena's journal. She paused on a recipe labeled stolen mac and cheese. "What's this one?" she asked. Lena chuckled. "The first meal I made unsupervised, in a foster home that didn't care if we ate or not. I snuck into the kitchen at midnight and mixed together whatever was in the pantry. Was it good? Terrible," Lena said. "But it felt like mine." Isabel ran her fingers along the margin. Someone had written, "Add hope to taste." She looked up. "You ever think maybe helping me is helping you too?" Lena stilled. No one had asked her that before, I think. Lena said after a long pause, "that I've spent most of my life helping others so I wouldn't have to help myself." "Then maybe," Isabel said gently, "it's time you let someone help you." Lena swallowed. The words landed deep. That night, Lena couldn't sleep. She sat at the kitchen table with her journal, an untouched cup of tea beside her. She flipped to a blank page and stared at it. Then, finally, she wrote, "I'm helping her, but who's helping me?" She let the words hang there, unanswered, honest. The next morning, she called a therapist, booked an appointment with James's payment. She could afford it now. But more importantly, she was ready. Therapy was harder than she expected. It cracked open things she'd sealed for years. The first night she went hungry. The time a foster parent slapped her for eating too fast. The fear of becoming visible, only to be cast aside again. But she kept going, one painful session at a time. And Isabel noticed. "You seem quieter," she said one day as they grated zucchini together. Lena nodded. "I'm doing some of my own work now." Isabel was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I'm proud of you." The words hit like sunlight. Weeks passed. They cooked. They talked. They cried. They laughed. The penthouse kitchen, once a cold display of wealth, had become a sanctuary. One evening, as the oven ticked in the background and a playlist hummed low from Lena's phone, Isabel turned to her. "You're opening that restaurant," she said. "You know that, right?" Lena smiled. "Maybe." "No," Isabel said, shaking her head. "Not maybe, you are. And when you do, I'll be there, helping, eating, whatever you need." Lena looked at her, saw the girl from the rain-soaked night, and the woman she was becoming. "Deal," she whispered. And in that moment, the kitchen wasn't just a kitchen. It was a lifeline, a promise, a beginning. The first cold morning of November arrived with quiet clarity. Lena stood outside a small storefront in Brooklyn, keys jingling in her hand. The building was nothing special. peeling paint around the windows. A crooked for rent sign tilted in the glass. But she saw it. Not what it was, but what it could be, a haven. She exhaled and unlocked the door. The hinges groaned like old bones. Inside, the space was bare. Dust floating in beams of morning light. Walls that hadn't seen care in years. But to Lena, it was beautiful. Later that afternoon, she brought Isabel to see it. "It smells like old socks," Isabel said, wrinkling her nose. Lena laughed. "You say that now, but wait until we bake bread in here." They walked the perimeter slowly. Lena pointed out where the booths would go, the counter, the chalkboard menu. Isabel ran her hand along a wall and smiled. "You gonna call it Boone's 2.0, she teased. Lena shook her head. "No, this one needs a new name." Isabel waited. "Harris's Haven," Lena said quietly. "Who's Harris?" "My birth name, before the system took it from me." Isabel nodded. "Then it's perfect." That night, Lena returned to the penthouse, feeling heavier and lighter at once. She settled into her usual spot at the kitchen table. Journal in hand, she flipped to the back past recipes, past sketches, past scribbled lines of dialogue she'd once overheard in diners and always meant to use. She opened to a blank page, and this time, instead of a recipe, she began to write a letter. "Dear little me, you were scared. You were hungry. You thought no one saw you. You were wrong. I see you. I remember every night you curled under thin blankets, waiting for footsteps that meant you'd be moved again. I remember how you whispered recipes into the dark. Like prayers, you thought you were invisible. You weren't. You mattered then, and you mattered now." She paused, the pen still in her hand. Outside, rain started to fall again, a soft rhythm against the windows. "You survived, and now you're more than surviving. You're building something. A place where no one has to feel small. A place where food isn't punishment or silence or control. It's love, it's belonging. You did that, you, and you were enough the whole time, love." Me. When she finished writing, she let the tears fall freely, not out of grief, out of release. In the weeks that followed, the restaurant took shape. The floor was redone, the booths reupholstered. In warm earth tones, the walls were painted a soft sage green. Lena hung black and white photos of real people smiling, crying, cooking, living. The chalkboard menu had one item listed in bold: tomato soup. Day one. Isabel was there every step of the way, helping paint, assembling furniture, even arguing over font choices for the menu. "You're impossible," Lena said one afternoon after Isabel rejected a fourth typography style. "I just want it to look like you," Isabel replied. That made Lena stop, because it was the first time someone had cared how she looked through her space. Her vision, not how she fit someone else's frame. One afternoon, Isabel walked into the diner with a small box. "What's this?" Lena asked, drying her hands on her apron. "Something I've been working on," Isabel said. Inside the box was a handmade plaque, a place to be full. Below it, a small line of script, in honor of every girl who thought she had to disappear to be loved. Lena felt her throat close. She pulled Isabel into a hug. "You didn't have to," she whispered. "I wanted to," Isabel replied. James came by a few days before the soft opening. He stood awkwardly by the door, scanning the place. "You built this," he said. "We built this," Lena replied, nodding toward Isabel, who was reorganizing a stack of cookbooks on the counter. James approached slowly. I wanted to say thank you for helping her, for pushing me. Lena looked at him. You listened. That was the hardest part. He nodded, then reached into his coat pocket and pulled out an envelope. No contracts, just a gift. Lena hesitated. Before taking it, inside was a check with enough zeros to fully fund Harris's haven. And then some. She looked up. I never got to show her love the way she needed, James said. But maybe helping you show it to others is a start. Lena didn't smile, but she nodded. It was enough. Opening night arrived quietly. No press. No influencers. Just friends, neighbors, and a few of Lena's old regulars from Boone's who had tracked her down by word of mouth. The room buzzed with warmth. The smell of tomato soup simmering filled the air. Photos hung on the walls, some new, some old. A girl in a raincoat. A man reading a poem off a napkin. A young woman standing behind the counter, smiling wide. Isabel stood beside Lena, wearing jeans and a t-shirt. Her hair tied back. No makeup, no mask. You ready, Lena asked. No, Isabel said, then grinned. But that never stopped me before. They served the first bowl together. A middle-aged woman, alone, ordered the soup. As Lena placed the bowl in front of her, she said, "This one's on the house, just something warm for a cold night." The woman smiled softly. "Thank you." It was the same line Lena had spoken months ago. The same moment, different life. Later that night, when the last guest had left, Isabel handed Lena a leather-bound journal. "What's this?" Lena asked. "Something for your next dream." Inside, the pages were blank, except the first one. A note in Isabel's handwriting. You were enough. You always were. Lena closed the journal and looked at her. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. The lights dimmed. The rain tapped softly outside, and for the first time in her life, Lena felt not just full but home. The chairs were stacked, the dishes washed, the last crumbs swept from the floor. Harris's haven had closed its doors for the night, but inside, the space still hummed with warmth, the kind that lingers after laughter, after stories shared over plates that came back empty. Lena moved through the quiet like someone exhaling after years of holding their breath. She flipped the sign on the door to closed and dimmed the lights, leaving just the string of warm bulbs over the counter. Behind her, Isabel finished wiping down the last table. "That went better than I thought," she said, resting the rag over her shoulder. Her voice tired but content. Lena turned to her, smiling softly. People stayed, they talked, they ate. Isabel walked over to the counter, leaned against it, then looked around. "Feels like a place that remembers things." "It is," Lena replied, crossing to the stove, "and I'm going to prove it." She lifted the lid on a pot she had left simmering quietly through the evening. The smell rose up immediately, familiar, nostalgic, sacred in its simplicity. "Tomato soup, the soup?" Isabel asked, amused. "The soup," Lena confirmed with a quiet nod. "The one that started all of this." She ladled 2 bowls and brought them to the table where it had all begun, booth number 3. Right near the window, they sat across from each other in the dim glow. For a moment, neither of them said anything. Lena took a spoonful first. The taste was the same, comforting, imperfect, hers. Across from her, Isabel held her spoon for a second longer. Then she took a bite. No hesitation, just hunger, trust, peace. After a moment, She set the spoon down gently. It still tastes like a beginning, she said. Quietly, Lena looked at her. You know, the first night I saw you, you looked like you were made of glass. Like if anyone spoke too loud, you'd shatter. I almost did, Isabel said, not hiding it. But you didn't speak loud. You just offered something warm. Lena's voice was soft when she answered. I didn't know what else to do. That's what saved me, Isabel said. She paused, eyes steady. You didn't try to fix me. You didn't try to make me eat. You just saw me. Lena blinked slowly, letting the words settle. Then she said, you saw me, too. They sat there, their bowls half full, the silence between them familiar, known, empty, but whole. Outside, the rain had started again. It tapped against the windows like it had months ago. The night Isabel walked into Boone's like a shadow. She seemed to be thinking the same thing. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I hadn't come in that night? Lena nodded. Sometimes. And Isabel asked. I think we both would have kept disappearing, Lena replied. In different ways. They went quiet again. The moment stretched. Then Isabel leaned forward, her voice lower. I've started writing again. Lena smiled. Yeah, not blog stuff, just me. My words, my real ones. Lena reached for her spoon again, swirling it slowly. Good, you've got things to say. I was afraid people wouldn't care, Isabel admitted. They don't have to, Lena said, her tone even. You do. Isabel looked down, a small smile forming. That's the kind of thing you write on a bathroom mirror. Already did, Lena replied with a laugh at Boone's in lipstick. No regrets. They laughed quietly, the kind of laugh that comes when you realize the storm has passed even if the sky is still grey. After a while, Isabel reached into her bag and pulled out a folded piece of paper. I wasn't sure when to give this to you, she said, sliding it across the table, but now seems right. Lena unfolded it. It was a printout, a news article from a small online publication. The headline read, From foster homes to Harris's Haven, how one bowl of soup changed her lives. Lena read it twice before looking up. Isabel watched her. It's going to reach people, not because it's dramatic, but because it's real. I don't need them to know my story, Lena said, her voice quieter now. I just want them to feel like they can write their own. You gave me mine, Isabel replied. Now maybe I can help someone else write theirs. Lena didn't speak. She just nodded. They returned to their bowls, each spoonful slower. Then the last, as if dragging out the moment. Eventually, Isabel leaned back, satisfied. This place, it's not just a restaurant. No, Lena said. It's home. The front door creaked softly as the wind nudged it. Rain whispered outside like a lullaby. Isabel looked out the window, her reflection faint in the glass. Do you ever miss the old life? Lena thought for a moment. I miss some people, she said, but not the way I used to hide. Me, too, Isabel murmured. They sat there until the soup turned lukewarm, until the rain softened into mist, until there was nothing left to say. And when they stood, they didn't clean the table right away. They left the bowls there, side by side, to lives shared over something simple. A reminder that sometimes a single gesture, a seat at a table, a bowl of soup can rewrite everything. Outside, the city hummed with night, but inside Harris's Haven it was still and safe, and for two women who had once lived like shadows, That was more than enough.